So, how did the Romans beat the Greeks? I mean, think about it. The Greeks had some of the best warriors in the Mediterranean world. Highly trained, they have phalanx, right? So that's extremely effective. I mean, think about it. How did the Greeks fight? Sarissa versus what? The Gladius? They definitely had a reach advantage. So how did the Romans do it? How did they conquer Greece? What was the secret of the Romans? Something so effective that the Greeks just could not stop them. Well, stay tuned and find out. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is the Metatron speaking. So, Roman domination over Greek history. Well, first of all, the first thing we should say is that the Roman absorption of the Greek world did not happen overnight. We are talking about a sporadic procedure which took, just spread over a long period of time. We have many battles, and we will consider a few of these battles in this video. So it was not like the Romans just to say, rolled over the Greeks, really quickly. It was not an easy thing to accomplish, and yet the Romans will succeed. A very popular belief in answering this question is the idea of Rome, or the Roman Republic, being united, a united political and economical body, whereas Greece was, as we know, fragmented. Or not united, but political fragmentation, that never really convinced me. You know why? Because if you think about it, 3 centuries prior to the attempts of the Roman Republic in conquering Greece, Greece had to face the Persians, and there was still political fragmentation at the time. We still have the polis, city, states, but that didn't seem to be a problem at all in facing and defending their territories against the Persians. So, if they managed before, why was political fragmentation a problem when facing Rome, if it wasn't a problem when facing the Persians? No, I don't think that the answer lies into that situation, the political situation. It's a different situation, it's deeper than that, it's more complex than that. To give us a little bit of background on what was going on at the time, well, what had just happened? In 146, Rome had beaten or beat Carthage. So, Rome had no powerful enemy on the west. So they started focusing the military campaigns on the east, against Greece, against the Macedonians, etc. Now, what was the situation in the Greek borders instead? Well, the situation was different because the Greeks had to consider and take care and defend from the Romans on the west, but they had other powerful and, most importantly, untrustworthy neighbors around, namely the Kingdom of Pontus and the Parthians. So this already meant that while Rome could focus entirely his forces against Greece, the Greek city-states could never always entirely focus on fighting the Romans, because they had to take care of and be always ready to defend from other possible invaders. So, we've just established that political fragmentation in Greece did not hinder military effectiveness, but something we have to consider is when does Greece face the Romans? In Hellenistic times. When did Greece face the Persians? In classical times. Now, there is a huge difference here, because in classical times, for example, if we have to consider only Peloponnesus, well, Peloponnesus managed to rise 80,000 strong men to fight in one of the wars and one of the battles at the time. But when they had to face the Romans, they only managed to raise an army of 11,000 soldiers, some of which weren't even Greeks. They were mercenaries. Simply put, that is because in Hellenistic time we have the degradation of citizen army institution in Greece. On the other hand, the Roman Republic had no such problems at all, and they could draw most of their soldiers from the Italian hinterland. And yet the Romans did not have an easy time. Let's have a look at the Battle of Pyrrhic in 280 BC. What happened during that battle? Who won? The Greeks. So we can see that beating the Phalanx was never an easy task, but it was a costly victory, meaning that the Greeks did pay a heavy price in casualties to face off the Romans. So the Romans were still a formidable foe and opponent.
Warning.
What was that sound? 146 BC we have the Battle of Corinth, where the situation is completely different. What happens in that battle is really interesting, is that at first the Greeks have the upper hand because they managed to invade and attack the Roman camp at night. Now because of that, the Greek army actually felt overconfident and decided to face the Romans on the following day. But the superior Roman cavalry managed to completely annihilate Greek cavalry. The Phalanx are eventually destroyed, some retreat within the city walls, but the city of Corinth, which was not ready to defend itself against the Romans, will be eventually completely destroyed, and the Romans will plunder all its art and treasures. But how can an army based on manupules and Gladius hand-to-hand combat beat an army of Phalanx with bronze shield, Sarissa, reach advantage in their own land? Well, there are two more battles that actually answer our question. It's not just a matter of equipment in war, it's not just a matter of maneuverability either, because yes, the Roman army was more flexible, it was divided, as I said, in manupules, whereas the Greek army, it was compact, but it was rigid. Of course, that is that. But you need to understand that in battle, in ancient warfare, but I would say even in modern warfare to a certain extent, what really made the difference was the generals. Now, the generals who were leading a Roman army at the time were absolutely genius. They managed to lure the Greek phalanx into uneven territory. Now, in uneven territory, what happens to the Greek phalanx is that it loses cohesion, and when the phalanx loses cohesion, it sort of loses its defensive power. This is when some of the Roman manipules managed to enter inside the gaps that they had just formed, and in extremely close quarter combat the Gladius proved superior. But it's not just that again. The Romans were tactically superior. What they managed to do was to get rid of the mercenary infantry that was protecting the sides of the phalanx during these battles. So again, it was a problem of mercenaries, unreliable mercenaries, because once these were driven off, the Romans managed to surround the phalanx. What this means is that they outflanked them, and in some situations even managed to attack them at the rear. And this is where, so had the Greeks managed to fight the Romans with equal conditions and equal people in command, then probably the Greeks would have won. But that did not happen. The Roman generals proved superior at that time, and tactics is the ultimate winner of battles. But how did the Greeks react to Roman domination? Well, you see, at the end of the day, while Persians were considered to be evil and oppressors, the Romans were never considered to be evil by the Greeks, and thus, why? Because the Roman world was rather similar to the Greek world in both culture, religion, and whatnot. Now, because of that, the Greeks did not consider the Romans inferior, and they did not consider them to be oppressors. So even if they still considered them to be barbarians, rather than being governed or controlled by a completely foreign power, Roman domination was preferable. So much so that Roman control was even more desirable sometimes for some city-states than that of other Greek powers. Roman courage, bold tactics, and brilliant actions of the Roman lieutenants and centurions allowed Rome to defeat some of the best warriors the world has ever seen. Alright, noble ones, I hope that you enjoyed this video. As always, I'd like to thank you for your time and your support. I'm of course looking forward to hear your opinions on this. Here, I'm of course sharing my own opinions. There are different schools of thought on this matter from historians. This is my interpretation, of course, based on my own personal studies, but please feel free to share your own opinions. This channel is always a good opportunity for all of us to share our thoughts on historical matters, linguistic matters, and whatnot. Thank you for your time. I'll see you tomorrow for my next daily upload, which will be linguistic, mind you. And remember, the Metatron has spread his wings. Valete!